key for me is management by objectives was quite scientific and focusing objectives.
Yeah, the way it was applied, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you don't lose that. What you do is go to higher orders of, well, then you include what's happening to the people in achieving these objectives and how do you do it
and their emotional
better.
life and
exactly,
life and so on.
Then, hey, there's another level actually of interconnectedness and flow that actually we need to take into account. But for me as a practicing leader, if I forget or deny the issues of objectives and outcomes and
just do flow all day,
yes,
your company doesn't get
you don't get a high performance.
You need them both.
You need them both.
Right.
So the way I work is my organisation will always have clear targets, clear outcomes, but they're not an end in themselves. They are a framework through which we look at where we're going and you revisit them in the light of much more esoteric things like flow and interconnectedness and new information coming in.
And
so
insight
it's more
and inspiration. And,
inspiration, creativity. So it's all of it integrated together.
That's really exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. For me, my leadership work is creativity.
It's like bringing out the creativity in other people.
It's like orchestrating something that flows and manifests, and you've got satisfied staff who are really fulfilling their potential. You've got students who are doing wonderful things, fulfilling their potential. You're generating abundance in order to be able to do more things.
Yeah, because it's intellectual abundance, intellectual capital.
Intellectual abundance, but you need financial abundance. You need money to be able to invest and to do things, and that is what, to me, is... I describe myself as a corporate mystic now. So the two parts are the corporate life, which is, there's a skill in that.
Sure.
You have to learn it and practice it and master it. And then the mystical element in me, which is bringing in the more creative, visionary side. And the two together are what generate highly successful organisations, one without the other, and it's not quite the same.
Interesting, okay. So that leads me to my next question, which is you ended up, after working at Cell, you were kind of headhunted by the Cabinet Office for training, civil service and stuff, bringing some of these ideas in. Can you tell us about that? Yes.
Gordon Brown, under the previous government, wanted a review of the whole of public sector leadership. And there are 11 leadership academies, Cell being one of them. So I was asked to sit on a review group with other civil servants, informed as well by other practitioners, to look at how does public sector leadership development need to go into the future.
Right.
And I was, if you like, the practitioner expert on that review group. What was really exciting about that, and the report is in the process of being looked at by the new coalition government now.
So you produced the report, that group?
There were 2 reports, yeah.
And that was done by the end of the last government?
Yes. So what we did was we said, well, how can we take this work to present it to the new government in a way that they might find it attractive and using it, and that is in the process of happening now. Yeah. What I found very, very exciting about that work is the openness of very senior civil servants to look at systems leadership that's much more interconnected, leadership that is much more collective, leadership and really looking at that balance between centralisation and local freedoms.
Right.
And how you enable people in the localities to step up into leadership roles and have minimal centralist interference, if you like.
Sort of empowering the branches of the tree.
There's a real genuine desire to do that, and certainly I am working with ministers in biz and the university and skills ministers in the John Hayes, David Willits and Vic Cabral is our Secretary of State.
Right.
And what I can tell you is they're even more so wanting to empower and to enable the practitioners to be true professionals and to be able to do their jobs properly.
Like
so,
teachers and
ordinary nurses and doctors, yes, absolutely. So there is a huge, genuine desire by this new government, the parts that I'm involved with anyway, and that includes, actually my organisation has just been chosen as a pathfinder, 157 has been chosen as a pathfinder in the Cabinet Office by Francis Maud,
right.
To look at employee-led mutuals. So we're hoping to set up an awarding body that's an employee-led mutual. So looking at collectives, looking at employee ownership, looking at whole new ways of literally getting more engagement from employees is really key to the new government's philosophy.
There is a kind of metaphysical bit to that, isn't there, as well? Because if you have a model of reality that it's centralised, everything has to come from up top and trickle down to us peasants, and we need to be over-regulated and overruled and overtaxed and overburdened. It seems to me there's been a bit of a shift. There's a realisation that no, we all are endowed with common sense. If you take the metaphysical view, we're all endowed actually with some spark of even divinity and spirituality, then we can figure out what to do in any given situation. So that's how you can explain the metaphysics of re-empowering ordinary teachers and doctors and so on, instead of this obsession with over-regulating.
Absolutely.
Why do you think the last... Why did anybody ever think that we needed to be so over-regulated and over-managed?
Well, I can give you my theory.
Yeah.
When you're in senior leadership stroke management roles, the onus of responsibility is really heavy.
Right.
And people worry.
They panic
about getting it right, and if things go wrong, and what happened with the last government is they started to get held responsible for everything. You know that statement that Blair made at some point, I'll be held responsible for every bedpan that rings or drops or something.
Really? I don't recall that.
I think that was the downward spiral, because what then starts to happen, ministers are held responsible for everything right down to a micro level. Then ministers start to get worried about losing their jobs.
So they then want the paper trail.
So they're having to control it in order to make sure, and that's
but
not
that's all a fear-based system, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're bad people or anything. It's because the system has started to be based on it's Theory X. Theory X, which is fear-based. Everybody's stupid unless you make sure they're not.
Right. Whereas if you empower people to come up with their original intelligence, to use Buddhist terminology, their Buddha nature, which we're all endowed with, you know, then you just got to, you know...
Well, this was the magic that happened...
faith, which is a faith-based system.
This is the magic that happened in Cell.
Right.
I actually had to work very hard, even with all the work I've done on myself and my metaphysical belief. When I'm the new chief exec of an organisation and I'm not clear we can make these targets, you can feel it come in about, oh, well, I need to control that, or I better check that, or whatever. And I had to go, I put myself into a very stringent coaching programme to help me keep letting go.
Of that instinct to
micromanage. And it's quite low in me. So if you haven't done that, inner work, if you haven't got to a place where you're aware of your defences and you can transcend your ego needs, that's how managers and leaders get caught in that trap of control.
Yeah, and then they build constant rungs of supervision and managing,
and then they feed themselves.
And it's just
the system starts to feed itself.
Yeah. Yes, which is bonkers. I think you and I, I think the Taoist idea that the real leader is kind of invisible, and more like a follower of spirit, and things get done of themselves.
Yes.
But there is a system and a method and an intelligence you need to get that done.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you know it's trust in God but tether your camel.
Right.
You to have that level of trust, there has to be a skill that you know what's happening about it, and there also has to be an alignment and a presencing and a connection with that greater wisdom that's in place all the time.
Yeah.
Because the problem that happens with leaders in leadership development is suddenly they go, oh, it means I can just let go of everything.
Right.
No, it doesn't. And then something starts to go wrong, then their control snaps back in place.
Yeah.
For me, I think if we want world peace and if we want the the maximum potential and high-performing organisations. It's the work of leaders being able to see their defences, transcend their ego, and a direct experience of interconnectedness enables them to do that work.
How do you rate political leadership on the planet at the moment? I mean, you've worked with some politicians, ministers, and even met, the Prime Minister and so on. But what about, say, comparatively on a global level? Do you think it gets very lonely at the top, and therefore they end up fighting wars, or what? You mentioned world peace. How can we work with political leaders to move away from a fear system?
I think it's back to the same issue. If you take something like Obama and Mandela and Gandhi, there are examples of leaders who've ended up being in very political positions, high power, high profile political positions, and it comes back to their stage of development. But the system is mitigating, the fear-based world in which they live is mitigating very often. I'm really interested in what's going to happen with Obama in terms of the system that's designed for leaders who are of lower level, who link into that fear stuff. It sounds really trite when you say it, but I actually think at the end of the day, a mass or a broader collection of people doing their work, whether you look at it from spiral dynamics or you look at it from integral development, or you look at Lovinger's stages of development, or any stage of development, it's about leaders having done their inner work and being able to be mindful and rise above and inspire others to step out of fear into love and expansiveness.